How about dating? Don't you love dating? Had a woman go through a divorce once. She sat in my study and cried. I said, "Sister, I'm being the compassionate pastor. Lots of people go through a divorce. I don't care about the divorce. I just don't want to date again." Watch this. In dating, 3 things are desperately needed. And this is the wonder about this book. It doesn't go that deep, but it just goes wonderfully simple. You have to have 3 things. You have to have time, where you just have you don't have any strings attached, where you just spend time with a person. And you don't spend time in a place that makes provision for the flesh. Guy says to me, we went out to the park at night, got in the back seat, and got tempted. Well, of course you did. If you didn't, you got a problem. Romans 13, make no provision for the what? For the flesh in regard to its lust. Don't give your body a chance. Francis of Assisi called his body brother ass, because it will not do what you want it to do. Serve God, body. No, we ain't doing that. Squat down. You can't trust your body. So this couple is going to spend time, and if you'll look in verse 12, they eat together. If you look in verse 17 and 16, they have a picnic. They got a date. And they're out in the open enjoying each other. So you spend time with no strings attached. The next thing you do in a relationship, in dating, is that you cultivate respect. You cultivate respect. Fellas, let me tell you how to get a girl. The greatest sex organ on a woman is her mind. And when she respects a man and regards him highly, respect and romance are cousins. You can't love somebody you don't like. And so this couple has time, and they're going to cultivate a friendship. Now watch how it happens. Verse 9, if you want to put down how to cultivate something, put down the word regard. Look how they regard each other. Fellas, verse 9, what do you say to a girl that you want to win her heart? Look how he sees her. Verse 9, to me, my darling, you are like my mare among the chariots of Pharaoh. I probably ought to explain that, because that can get you in trouble. A mare was among the chariots of Pharaoh. This is a white steed that led all of his army. It was the most precious thing that was in Egypt. This horse was nigh unto a deity. We have a lot of horses in the North Texas area, and you've got these great big critters on these 4 little pins, and you have to treat them with tenderness. When this man calls her the mare of the chariots of Pharaoh, he says, you are without monetary value. You're beyond value. You are infinite in how I see you. Girls, I had a woman say to me once in the middle of a bad marriage, she said, I don't want my husband to be romantic. I want him to be civil. She said, I'll never forget it, I wish he would treat me like a Denny's waitress. And I thought she's kidding. And she was serious as cancer. She said, no. She said, I wish he would treat me like a Denny's waitress. He's so kind to Denny's waitresses. This guy says, you're the most wonderful thing in the world. That's how he sees her. And she says of him in verse 12, while the king was at his table, there eating, my perfume gave forth its fragrance. My beloved is to me a pouch of myrrh, which lies all night between my breasts. Let me tell you what that means. Women, the most precious thing to a woman was a pouch of perfume that gave them their fragrance. Myrrh was a very expensive aromatic rosin. And when she says, I'm at the table eating with this man, and my perfume gives forth its fragrance, do you see who the perfume is? It's my beloved. He's to me my pouch of myrrh that lies all night between my breasts. Simply means that she dreams of him. She thinks of him. You are my myrrh. You are my myrrh. That's how you regard each other. Look at verse 15. This is how you respect each other. You go from regarding to respecting. How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful you are, your eyes are like doves. When you see a dove, you're gentle toward it. You want to reach out and hold it. You want to treat it tenderly. He looks at her beauty, but it's a deeper beauty. It's what Peter called the precious quality of a quiet, gentle spirit that is expensive, literally, in the sight of God. He says, I respect you so much. Verse 16, she says, how handsome you are, my beloved. And do you see that word, fellas? It's the word pleasant. That's the same word used by how David felt about Jonathan, his best friend. You're my best buddy. Make an axiomatic statement right here about marriage. Marry your best pal, your best bud, your best partner. If your mate can't be your friend, then you don't want him as your mate. He regards her, she regards him. He respects her, she respects him, and she says, you are so pleasant. What that simply means is, and if you look at the next verse, it just tells you what pleasant means. Verse 17, she says, our couch in 16b is luxuriant. The beams of our houses are cedars and our rafters cypresses. The interpretation is apparently this. They're out in the open having a picnic. There are cypresses and cedars, and she calls it a couch and a mansion. What this means is the man is so pleasant, the man is so nice, the man is so tactful, the man is so respectful, he is such a good listener, that she says, when I am with you, I'm a millionaire, I'm a queen, and all I need is you, just being with you. Girls, that's how you should feel to the guy that you marry. You notice, fellas, we hadn't laid a glove on her yet. We hadn't touched her, we hadn't kissed her. And she says, I'm a millionaire out in the open, all I need is you. Our couch is luxurious because you are so pleasant. That means you're able to listen to a girl. And fellas, let me tell you a taboo that we do. Guys can be real romantic with the girl they want to get because a guy's a competitor. And he will get a girl and be romantic. He'll send her a flower every day for a year. And then once they get married, she won't get a flower till she's 60. Because a man tends to conquer the woman, mount her on the wall, and then use her to do the cooking and bear his progeny while he goes off and pursues his ambitions. You don't do that. You continually regard and respect and love your wife. You listen to her. You weigh your words. You apologize quickly. Never win an argument. I'm 0 and 1,000. And that has kept my marriage together. This video will not reach my wife, incidentally. One of the terms of the contract. I want to show you what happens when you have the right time and you cultivate a relationship. When you regard and respect each other, I want to show you what happens to you. Chapter 2, verse 1. Ladies, she's speaking. Girls, look at what she says about herself in 2:1. I am the rose of Sharon, the lily of the valleys. They're both singular nouns. Roses and lilies do not grow in clumps. They are singular. She says, I'm the most special woman on the face of the earth. Guys, in chapter 1, what did she feel about herself? Don't stare at me because I'm not that pretty. My skin is sunburned. Now what does she say about herself? I am beautiful. Why? Because this fellow treated her so lofty. Verse 2, because this guy says, like a lily among the thorns is my darling among the maidens, which translated means every woman in the world is hands off. You are the singular, most glorified, wonderful woman in all the universe. You think that makes a woman's heart beat when a man tells her that? Verse 3, not only does her view of herself go up, but look what she thinks of this man. Fellas, you want a girl to admire you? Treat her like a singular queen. Verse 3, like an apple tree among the trees of the forest. So is my beloved among the young men. Meaning every other guy does not meet any need that I have. You're all that I need. Verse 3b, in his shade I took great delight and sat down. His fruit was sweet to my taste. Shade means that he could protect her, that she could come underneath his wing. The New Testament puts it like this, that the man should nourish and cherish his wife as he does his own body and as Christ does the church. That means that my wife can never be afraid to get close to me, because she's never afraid to get close because she knows I'll never hurt her. I'll never demean her. I'll never treat her in a hard way. She can submit to me as the most logical thing in the world because I'm the guy that will die for her. In his shade I took delight and I rested. He provides for her. He protects her. Fellas, look at verse 4. He's brought me to his banquet hall. That's an open place, a public place. We're not now having a picnic. We've gone to Luby's. We've gone to Furs. We're gone to Wyatt's, all right? He's brought me to a banquet hall in a public place, and his banner over me is love. Let me tell you what that means. Generals on the field would identify their troops by a banner. God is called Jehovah our banner, that you fight under him. He owns you. It's the idea that a general owned his troops by putting up a banner. Solomon owned this woman, and she willingly gave herself. Do you know what his mark of ownership was? Love. What it means is that you could go into a public place and you could look at how this man treated this woman, and he treated her openly. He pulled the chair out. He sat down with her. Fellas, never walk in front of your wife. Write that down. Never walk in front of your wife. You walk with her. This is not your little coolie that follows you around and brings you water. You walk with her. And you pull the chair out and you open the door. This is your singular rose. This is your singular lily. When you meet somebody, you say, "How do you do? I'm Tom, my wife, Teresa." Right here. You treat her like a queen. My wife corrected me about this early on. I grew up in a family with 3 brothers. I'd never had a woman in my house. I have 2 sons. Never had a daughter in my house. I had a dog named Johnny. I had 2 dogs when we got married called Rotor and Rooter. Not female dogs. We had male everything. And I wasn't really used to how to work in one of these female creatures right here. And I had a habit that my wife broke me of in about 5 seconds. That when I would talk to some guy or whatever, I had my wife right here. I was married, you know. But all of a sudden, I'm into my single mode when I'm talking to somebody. And you know what I would do very subtly? Teresa would be standing here, and I'd be talking to you, and I'd do this. I'd move in between you and her, and I'd cut her out. And it was because this is my terrain. It's my domain. And she informed me. That you do not do that. Listen, guys, don't fall into that. Are you seeing what's growing? Her love of her self-esteem and her love of this man grow because he provides, he protects, he promotes this girl. Now watch what else grows. Verse 5. Sustain me with raisin cakes because I am lovesick. Refresh me with apples. You know what a raisin cake was? They were considered by the Jews to be aphrodisiacs because they were full of seeds. They were used in heathen worship. The book of Hosea holds Israel with contempt for following after other gods with raisin cakes. In the book of 2 Samuel, David brings the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem and establishes the kingdom. And he calls all of Jerusalem together and blesses them and sends them home to be with their families and distributes, and I quote, to each of them raisin cakes. Do you know why? Because the kingdom was enthroned, righteousness was established, and David expected the Mosaic covenant when Israel was obedient to go into effect. The Abrahamic covenant to go into effect. They were to be like sand to the sea, and he sent them home to be fruitful and multiply. He gave them raisin cakes. This, girls, is a sensuous statement. This woman says, He provides for me, He promotes me, He protects me. I admire Him, I love Him, I feel so good because He treats me this way. Sustain me with raisin cakes, I'm lovesick. That is a passionate verse. What that means is, I want Him. Verse 6. Let His left hand be under my head and His right hand embrace me. What position is that? Let His left hand not be around my head, be under my head, and His right hand embrace me. That is the sexual position. This book is used by one Christian doctor as to the technique of foreplay in marriage. You cradle your wife and you fondle her. See also Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 6. What does that verse mean? I love to teach this to little old ladies. What do you think that means, ladies? I really don't know. I'll tell you what it means. Incidentally, let me do a little preaching right here. This is why it's so hard to find a commentary on the Song of Solomon, because we all think that God is so mystic in the holy other that He doesn't know what passion is. Where do you think we got passion from and desire from? We got it from God. We think sometimes we say, God, help me deal with my lust. You're what? What? Help me. What's lust? No, He knows what it is. And that's why the book is so often taught in allegory as Christ to the church, because we can't imagine this being real. As a matter of fact, in the early centuries of the Christian church, the Jews got together and they had a council as to what was and what was not their books, as you saw gathering New Testament books. And one of the books they had a problem with canonizing was Ecclesiastes, because of the occasional use of sarcasm, and the Song of Solomon, because the book was so passionate. Jewish boys were not permitted to read this until they were older, because it would stir the passions, and it does. Now, don't look at the verse. This woman says, because of how you treat me, I esteem myself, I love you because of your protection, provision, your promotion of me. I want you. I want your left hand under my head. I want to be one with you. What do you think the next verse will say? Don't look. Do you think God will speak and say, foul woman, nursing these loathsome feelings? And Solomon took her hints and whomped her. You think it'll say that? This woman wants him. Look at what the next verse says. Solomon says, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the hinds of the field. In the book of Proverbs, Solomon refers to your wife as you are to love her like a graceful doe and a loving hind. Let her breast satisfy you at all time. He speaks of this woman in the highest of gentle terms as a brown-eyed doe that you move so tenderly with. And he speaks to his harem for their aid, and he says, I adjure you by the gracefulness of this woman. Look at the rest of the verse. Don't arouse or awaken, and the word love there is in the neuter, love until it pleases. Solomon is saying, sweetheart, that feeling that you feel is good, but it's waiting to be awakened on a later day. Not yet. And fellas, the guy takes the initiative. That woman is geared to give herself. You know, sticking this thing on your finger doesn't kick your sex drive in gear. You want that person. And Solomon says it's good, but it's not yet. What grows in marriage? Her admiration of her, of him, and her restraint grows. There's three things needed in a dating relationship: time, cultivation, and restraint. Because when you spend time regarding and respecting a person, the natural phenomena of romance is to give yourself. That's the way we're made. And you got to shut it down. You got to take care of it. Give you a good example of this. How many of you set fires in your living room? You don't? Let me ask it again. How many of you have fireplaces in your home? Now raise your hand. Oh, lots of you have fires in your living room. But you say, you don't understand, Tom. That fireplace is made out of brick and glass and metal, and I have pokers to keep everything in there, and I make sure that never will that fireplace get out of there. The fireplace is the place of warmth and happiness and light. That's what sex is to a marriage. It's not the main course. It's the topping. It's the final follow-through of love and tenderness, is to give yourself. My honeymoon night, I was just laying there with my wife, and I thought, what a neat institution is sex. I don't just have to write a love note. I just don't have to say this. I can actually, in sex, it can be like guiding a big fighter that you got this big, enormous machine, but you can guide it with just a fingertip control. That I can have all of these emotions of love to my wife, and yet I can just, with fingertips, make her feel a certain way. God was so wise to give sex. But if I let it premaritally get out of where it's supposed to be, what happens to a house when it gets out of where it's supposed to be? It'll burn the whole thing down, and you ain't got nothing but a fireplace sticking up. And that's what happens to sex. You burn your whole life down, and you've got nothing left but a sex drive. As we close, some of you may be sitting here saying, man, have I blown it. I had one guy after this walk up and he said, my mother wrote you. No. The wonderful thing is, none of us are like we should be, and that's, people, why you have in Christianity a fellow who died upon a cross that was the very Son of God, to die for what we could not do, to convert us, to give us the desire to do what we ought. That is Christianity. And no matter how foul you may have been, Jesus Christ can wash you clean. If you knew about me what God knows about me, you wouldn't come. But if I knew about you what God knew, we wouldn't let you in. So it's all the same. True story. One time they baptized one of the presidents of Texas, Sam Houston. Nasty fella. And they said to him, Sam, your sins are washed away. Sam said, God help the fish. And that's the way a lot of us feel, isn't it?